everybody. I'm Charles Szczepanek. Welcome back to Pianist Academy. How are you all doing? Great to see you, Antonio, Medlington Groomer, C Drive, Nancy, Alicia, and Pianist 2011. Welcome, everybody. How's practice going? What are you working on? We're going to have a totally open question and answer session like we usually do. Not in the too distant future today, but we're going to start with something that I wasn't expecting until yesterday. But first, let's just catch up. Hey, Zayday, welcome. And hey, J2000 and Bjorn Rhodesy. Welcome, welcome, everybody. All my friends. Yeah, what are you working on? Drop it in the chat. And especially if you haven't done this before on a stream, let us know where you're tuning in from. And if you have, drop it again, just so we all remember. Pianist 2011, you were waiting for this. Awesome. I'm glad to hear that. How many of you, well, you all clicked on it. You can see the title of today's stream. How many of you know about Ivo Pogorelich? And what do you know about him? Bjorn, stay safe, Bjorn. Let's see. Oh, no. I lost my... Oh, there it comes back. I lost my mouse for a second. Okay. Pianist 2011, Ivo Pogorelich. Concert pianist. Nancy doesn't know anything. Pianist, I'm assuming... Maybe you've heard of him. Rhodesy, you said you're working on up to the 35th bar of Chopin's First Ballade. Very cool. And now you're finishing Waltz Opus 64, number 3. Great. Okay, pianist, maybe you have heard of Ivo. And Alicia doesn't know much, but you've heard of him. Okay. Who has heard of him? There's one person here who I know has. And hey, Restless Guitar, welcome. Why is he so famous? Maybe not famous to some of you, obviously, but he's very famous in the piano world. C Drive, you said you've heard of him, but you don't think you've ever heard him play. We're going to change that today at the risk of copyright problems with this stream, but they won't happen until we're done. So we'll just go for it and see what happens. Rhodesy, isn't Ivo the strange pianist who has very interesting interpretations? Yeah, that's one way to describe him. Zayday, you say you saw him live in the 90s. Very cool. Yeah, Pianist 2011, is he a good concert pianist? Yeah, I think we can answer that regardless of everything else we talk about today. I think we can answer that as a yes. And C Drive, there you go. Pogorelich is the guy that Martha Argerich quit the Chopin competition jury over. That's right. 1980. Yeah, Martha thought he was just an amazing artist and doing really interesting and great things with the piano that were different. And there was a disagreement on the jury about that. And yes, she left the jury. Antonio, you say you have a friend in Italy who saw him live in Ravenna a few weeks ago. Very, very cool. Maybe, is that what prompted your question, Antonio? Antonio's the one that brought up Pogorelich to me in an email yesterday, which is why this stream got retitled between when I posted it yesterday and this morning about what we were going to start our conversation with. Pianist 2011, this stream will be about 2 hours. That's about how long we usually go. And you know, this first topic, we'll talk about as long as you all want to. I think it'll be really interesting. Hey, is it Louis or Louis? Thank you for that comment. I appreciate it. Okay, we're going to take a listen to some Pogorelich. And I'm going to invite all of you to, as we take a listen, I'm going to show sheet music to what we're listening to. We're not going to play a video of him playing. We're just going to focus on seeing the score, seeing the markings, and hearing what Ivo has to say about them. And there will probably be occasions where I'm going to give some reaction live to what I'm hearing as best I can. It's going to come, for me, it's coming through a little speaker like across the room. So there might be some places that I have a little bit of a hard time hearing, but we're going to do our best. And so I might pause the playback occasionally to say a few things about it, but I would invite all of you, as we're going through and listening, drop your thoughts about what you're hearing, and especially how it relates to the score, or just how you feel about it. Drop them in the chat as we go. Okay, give me just a second. We're going to listen to Pogorelich play a C drive. You took the words right out of my title. A heretical genius. Is heretical a positive or a negative? All right. Let's see. So the piece we're going to be listening to is this lovely Chopin Nocturne. And yeah, let's just jump in. Drop your thoughts in the comments as we take a listen. So you're going to hear Pogorelich play, and we'll follow along on the score as we go. So that first note came so out of the blue, I actually jumped off the bench slightly. Yeah, that was startling. Let's keep going. It's a very slow lento tempo. Very aggressive. But it's just nice shape down. Some of the lyrical lines are really nicely shaped. That was a really nice juxtaposition of two ideas. That G is, every time he plays it, it pops. Those are quite accented, where Chopin wrote expressive. Interesting. Same melody, but done in a different way than the top of the piece. You never know when you're going to get surprised. Not really fortissimo there. Oh, I have one more thing before we get into this next section. A lot of what he played in the bass, I did not think were really 16th notes back on the first page. They were almost like 30-second notes. His tempo is so slow that the rhythm is possibly different than what Chopin wrote. Let's keep going. I quite like that. The rolls are so controlled. That's definitely double dotted. Those are almost like detached triplets, octaves. Such big sound. And this is quite slow compared to, I think, how we'd usually hear it. Okay. All right, everybody. I saw some thoughts get dropped. So let's go through your thoughts about that. Antonio, this is recent Pogorelich. This is off an album from 2022. It's just called Chopin. And let's see. Hey, Zero. Pianist, let's see. You said kind of sounds like Chopin, but different. Oh, I see. I got to go back. So, Rhodesy, you started us off, kind of, by you saying you've been listening to the golden age of pianists like Courteau and Hoffman, Pogorelich. Pogorelich sounds like an alien compared to them. Is different? Uh-huh. Okay. And pianists, yeah, we'll come back to that question. Let's see. And Zero, you've got best new way to learn a piece. We'll come back to that question. Rhodesy, you said the doppio, double movement. Yeah, how he plays it is bizarre. It's different, for sure. And hey, Kale. And hey, Peaky. Zayday, you said this is your practice tempo. Okay. Why does he bring out the chords so much? Yeah. Okay. Hey, let's talk about what reactions did you have? What did he make you feel? Especially if you know the piece. I tried to pick something that's a very, very famous work so that hopefully you've heard the piece before, hopefully from many artists. Yeah. Rhodesy, you said confused. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? What do you think, Rhodesy? Is it a good thing or a bad thing? Caleb, you said unusual emphasis. Yeah, Alicia, you say you really love how the slow pace allowed more emphasis on the monster. Yeah. And Zayday, you said it's quite hypnotic, actually, but Let's have some, other than Rhodesy, you said confused. Let's talk about some emotion. What emotional reaction did you have to the opening, the first theme? This one. Or how he played it would have been. Alicia, you thought it was a rare instance of being able to relish the chords. Great. Cool. Rhodesy, you said interesting to listen to, but you personally wouldn't seek out a performance like this. Why not? Let's be more descriptive about that. C Drive, you say, I tend to like pieces played at a slow tempo, so you liked it. Great. Give me more. Give me more reaction. What emotion do you think Pogorelich was trying to draw out of the opening theme? Do you want to hear it again? I'll try not to jump from the first melody note. But let's take a listen to just the first couple bars. Okay. What do you think? Other than like, dislike, confused, not confused, what emotion would you tie to the way he plays the chords, to the way he chooses to phrase the melody? C Drive, you said if you'd never heard the piece played by anybody else, would you have a different reaction to it? I think absolutely. Yeah. But kind of what I'm trying to get at here is, do we have, as listeners, do we have the ability to bypass our expectations and just listen to what this artist is doing with this piece, as if we were hearing the piece for the first time? Yeah, Rotsi, you say, where is Cantabile? Isn't it supposed to be like a song? Why is he choosing to not make it that way? So here, what I'm getting at, Pogorelich isn't stupid. He's not... he probably knows all of the ways that he is disobeying the score. Why? Why is he doing it? It's not because he doesn't know how to read the markings. It's not because he hasn't studied a lot. It's not because he hasn't studied with great teachers. Why is it happening? Antonio, yeah, you said with your friend you were discussing how he explores structure and the musical meaning of a piece, like bringing out things other pianists don't. You said you agree in principle, but often you find his tempo and dynamic choices distracting. Mm-hmm. Let's put yourselves in Martha Argerich's shoes. Why does she like the way he plays so much? Why do others dislike it so much? When we hear things that are different in classical music, I think we tend to have, because we've heard the music before, and especially because we live in an era where we can go out and hear on YouTube or on any of your streaming services, you can hear just about anybody play anything. You can find 100 recordings of a great work like this, maybe 1,000. You can find a tremendous number. And we become inundated basically with one way of playing the piece that kind of everybody plays. Martha didn't like it simply because he was different. Keep thinking about it. Lisha, you said, do you think he plays it that way because it is the way he wishes to hear it? I think that's absolutely true. Yeah. Let's see. We also had Nancy, you had said, it sounds like longing, going back to when I asked about the opening statement. How is... Okay, if I play a little bit like what Pogorelich just showed us, and then I contrast that with how the piece is usually played, how is the emotion different between the two? So here's kind of what we just heard. Okay. No, here's maybe a little bit more common interpretation. What's the difference between the two? Don't tell me tempo, that's obvious. Don't tell me dynamic. At the heart of the art, what's the difference between the two? Oh, Zayday, I'm sorry your internet went down. Talento. It's like a funeral procession, okay? Bedlington Groomer, interesting comment. You say, wouldn't a great pianist always play a piece the way they want to hear it? You mean, very different from a student who's being taught how to play it the way the composer would want it. So, yeah, that's a great thing to dive into. I don't know if I want to go down that rabbit hole quite yet, because we'll spend a long time there. C Drive and Leisha, let's Bedlington Groomer. If I forget to come back to that, let's definitely come back to that. So please remind me. But C Drive, you said singing versus speaking. I really like that, because now you're listening for objectively instead of subjectively. Instead of saying, oh, I like one and I don't like this other one. What is the difference, and why is the difference being created? One is more sung, one is more spoken. Spoken is more articulate. It's more jagged. Sung is very smooth. Is there a justification in the score? Don't get hung up on that. Don't get hung up on mezza voce. There we go. Let's forget that that's there. Is there a justification in the score for a more spoken interpretation? Let's see. Alicia, you said contemplation versus moving a story along. I like that as well. Yeah, Antonio, yeah, you had such a great question and there's so much I think we can learn and discuss just from listening to this that, well, we're going there. Rhodesy, it has to sing. That's what Chopin marked out, but even he wouldn't play this the same way twice. Correct. How do you know, Rhodesy, that the marking that exists on one Chopin publication, the one that we have today, is what he actually meant? Forever and ever. I don't think any of us really know the answer to that question. Sure, we know things, that, okay, would Chopin have played that jaggedly? No. But if Chopin were listening to it today, what would he have thought? I don't think the right answer is that he would have hated it and that he would have said it's not a representation of his piece. I don't think that would have happened at all. Zayde said, was this not composed when Chopin lost a relationship? I don't know that. I don't know the history and exactly what he was going through when he wrote this. And should performers take that into account? Yeah. If you do look into the history of what the composer was going through, that can open up lots of doors for you to understand how to frame your interpretation. Yeah. Nancy, you've got a great answer. Speaking, yes, there are detached notes in measure 1. Measure 1 has rests. There is no legato line. Right? Even the left hand is marked as staccato articulation, even though it's under pedal. All of it's staccato articulation. And then we get some legato, which, guess what? Pogorelich does obey when we get to measure 2. This does become a line. And we hear it extend. It still has it has more up and down, more variation than what you typically hear, more variation in how he creates the phrase. Most people are just going to make one really long gesture. That's beautiful. He does something different, but he never breaks the phrase. So truly, the only marking that he disobeyed was the one I covered up. What does mezza voce mean? Yes, Zayde, you're right on your comment. Chopin composed at the piano and improvised a lot. And you believe Chopin hated having to freeze his compositions into print. That's absolutely true. As a composer, I can say the same thing. In fact, I find it really difficult to put compositions down into notation because the way I feel and hear music does not fit into a grid of beats, really. It's so free. Are there times that the tempo is important? Yeah, even in what I write, the tempo is important. And when I interpret other people's music, tempo is important. Sense of pulses can be important. Keeping that pulse, right? Pulse is what keeps us alive, keeps music alive. But it doesn't always have to exist. By the way, mezza voce, since I haven't gotten a reply to that, mezza voce is under the voice, whispered, Okay, so now we know that's why if you read the score and you follow that marking, great. That's why everybody plays this. There isn't even a dynamic marking at the beginning, but everybody plays pianissimo, and they don't really bring the melody out. It just barely exists outside of the harmony. Right? Was very different. Halfway voice. Antonio, you said halfway voice. Great. Like speaking softly. Oh, it doesn't mean under the voice. What's the term that means under? Sotto voce means under. There we go. Okay. So if I were to characterize that opening statement in the basically what most people say with the music is that it's very introspective. It has a sense of despair, hopelessness, but not outward, but reflected inside. It's very somber. And if we don't rush the 16ths, we can add to that. Okay, if we listen back to Pogorelich's version, the root emotion is still the same, but the expression of it is different. Here it comes. Oh. No, if I'm honest with you, I would much rather hear that, what we just heard, than what everybody plays. Including the accent on that first melodic tone that, if would kind of throw you back in your chair a little bit. It's an outburst. But it's still an outburst within the emotion that I think Chopin intends. So, at its core, I think Pogorelich still expresses what the music wants. But it's not done in that really smooth and soft, introspective way. It's done in a way that's somber, yet distraught. Distraught and... what were some of the other words I used? Despair. Despair and being distraught. We would express that in two different ways, right? But they're and they can be an expression of the same sadness, or the same longing, or the same hurt and pain, right? So I think listening to that first line and how Pogorelich played it I was surprised by the first note. But then I said, you know what? After hearing the rest of the page, that first note sets up exactly what he's going to present and how he's going to tie it all together. And if we were in a concert hall listening to that, it wouldn't jar you and throw you back so much if you were sitting 20 or 30 rows back. It wouldn't be like this sting that's kind of in your face like we hear on a recording. It would be just a pure and striking tone, but it wouldn't sound as aggressive because of the distance. I think that's another interesting way to think about it. Yeah. Let's put the same thing another way. If I were hearing this in concert, I think I would prefer to hear someone actually give me the melody 30 rows back rather than bury it and force me to lean forward and turn my head. I don't want that. I want to hear the music. Especially at the beginning of the piece. It's one thing if you use that as an effect somewhere, like at a really high level when we're talking about performing live, we can kind of play with the psychology of our audience. And we can use dynamic to get people, our audience, to react a certain way. And one of the ways we can do that, two of the big ways we can do that are with extreme dynamic. Where you can start a piece and you can really just grab someone's attention and say, right, hey, be quiet. The piece started. Listen to what I have to say. This is really important. And you can choose to do that, or you can choose to try to get a similar but different kind of reaction by playing so softly that people have to hold their breath to hear what you're playing. That even the breathing inside is distracting from the music that we're hearing. And if you can get an audience to hold their breath, you're doing a great job. You are really setting a mood and telling a story. And if you can get an audience to go, whoa, what just happened? You're also doing a great job telling a story. And if you can use both, that's amazing. And I think over the course of Pogorelich's recording, just this one piece that we listened to, you can hear him use both extremes of those. There are times that were so quiet that on my playback device that I'm listening to here, I actually couldn't hear the notes. They were so soft. And then there were other moments that are just like smack you around. They're so aggressive. Okay, let's go back to some of these comments. Cynthia, you said the dots are staccato. Yeah, the dots here on the page, those are staccato under a pedal. Chopin, often you'll see Chopin write articulations that they provide a certain tone and a certain color, despite not being followed the way the articulation alone would be heard. Our staccato alone is short. Staccato with pedal is like a bell. It's not pushed, it's not pressed. It's not quite as warm. It should be struck, but sustained. So that's a different tone than pushing and kind of pulling the sound out of the piano, which maybe you would do if the staccatos weren't present. Let's see. XP, and you said there's a greater intensity of mood, as if you're right at the edge of all he can take. Yeah. I think that's true. Yeah. Cynthia, you said it's kind of beginning a solemn and like a funeral march. I especially at Pogorelich's tempo, I agree. At the common tempo, I think it's less like a funeral march and more just solemn, sad. Antonio, I have, but it's been a long, long time. Antonio's asking if I've heard Chopin's Second Piano Concerto played by Pogorelich from, I'm guessing, the mid-'80s. Yeah, Rhodesy. I didn't say those exact words, but actually the words you just put in the chat, shut up and listen. One of my mentors, Paul Arant, when I was working on his piece, and he was coaching me about how to start the first bar of the piece. It would be after intermission. His piece would always be played the first thing after intermission, and it would probably be the entire second half. And It opens kind of the reverse of the Rachmaninoff sonata. That. And when we were working on it, how I left the stage wing, how I walked across the stage, how I bowed, how I sat down, and the time it took me to get from the door to the first note was all exceptionally important to the impact of the first bar before the music even started. And then he said, that very first note you play, that's what you need to tell people. Shut up and listen. I'm playing. Literally, those were his words. Pianist, yes, definitely. I love Rachmaninoff's music. Antonio, you say Michelangelo did the opposite. You've heard him live, and he began so low, everybody sat forward and paid attention. Yeah, it is a choice. And I think Michelangelo's choice is more accepted because it's closer to what we expect. And I want to go back to that. I'll finish up these couple comments here, but yeah, thanks, Bedlington Grimmer. And Cynthia, you say, why can some pianists get away with wild interpretations and others can't? For example, Gould. Well, Pogorelich really didn't for a long time. I mean, he didn't win the Chopin competition. He caused big controversy. He didn't perform for a long time. Yeah, lots of people in the classical world revolt against his playing and his interpretation. And Gould, a lot of people feel the same way. I don't think Gould gets away with wild interpretations. I think when he was playing, when he was playing, Bach wasn't performed like very often, and Gould is especially known for doing crazy things with Bach. Bach wasn't in concert halls really before Gould. And so the music, guess what? There's a related theme here. The music wasn't all that widely heard. And so what were the expectations? There weren't many. Today, we have set all of these expectations. And, Gould kind of started the resurgence of figuring out and finding out how are we supposed to be playing this? Partly because his interpretations were so wacky, some people thought, well, this can't be. So let's find some proof about how it should be. And that proof of how it should be, I think, has led us to the current state of music where everybody kind of just plays the same way. As a lover of classical music, I find that incredibly frustrating. I don't want to go to a concert and hear the same piece played the same way by just another person. I want to be moved. And I think composers, and I'm going to say this because I write music, I think composers overall want their music to move people. And is there a right way to do it? I think there are limits, there are boundaries to not changing the piece. You can't write your own arrangement and say that it's still Chopin, for example, or Beethoven, or whatever. You can't change the notes. You can't change the rhythms. There are things you can't do. But, I mean, as a composer, I put music down on paper. I have to make certain decisions about how it goes down. And many times when I play my own work, I don't follow the markings on the score. And I cannot imagine that other composers across history haven't felt that way. Because music is a living and breathing thing. The art of music only happens. It doesn't happen on the page. It only happens when we sit down and we create it and we send it out of the instrument for ourselves to hear or for someone to hear. That's the only time music happens. And how I feel every time I sit down and play a note is different. Because every day is different. Every day I'm a different person. Every minute of every day I'm a different person. And every minute of every day I'm thinking and feeling something different. I'm thinking about different things. I've experienced something else. And over the years, right? And this is why you can go and listen to interpretations of great works from other artists and say, wow, when you have the same artist playing a work here and 50 years later, wow, it's so different, yet it's the same piece. So, Antonio's original question was like, what do I think of Pogorelich? And I find it really refreshing. I find a lot of his playing really refreshing. And I find a lot of good things in his playing and his interpretations. I find it's eye-opening. And it makes me, in a world where we're kind of oversaturated with hearing music, it actually makes me stop and think and say, why did he do that? Why did he play it that way? And if the problem with a lot of competitions today, and in Pogorelich's time at the Chopin competition, and that continue to exist, and I think exist in the classical world today, is that people have their mind made up about what they like, and they're not open to hearing anything that's different. I don't think that's music anymore. So I really enjoy hearing stuff like this because it makes me love the music kind of all over again and in a new way. And I say, it's so nice to not hear the same old thing. Do I think Pogorelich played anything that Chopin would have disagreed with? Actually, no, I don't. Because, kind of like what was mentioned in the chat, Chopin played his own works drastically different. All, day after day, even on the same day, he would play them drastically differently. So, yeah, I really enjoy listening to this. And because the piece starts off so differently, it makes me say, I really want to hear what's going to happen next. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, Zayday, there are a few classical pianists that improvise on audience suggestions, not many. Yeah, that's not really a thing anymore. Related to that, the art of classical piano today, I think a lot of the creativity is being lost on kind of a daily and yearly basis because of the expectations that critics have and that audiences have and that competition juries have. Music is a creative art. It's not a recreative art. And that sums up a deep disagreement I have with kind of the academic institution of classical music and how great artists are crowned today. There are a couple exceptions here and there, but for the most part, great artists today are the least offensive. And I think that's really sad. Because if you go back and you listen to early recordings when recording technology was just coming out, and people playing, so these would have been people that studied in the late 19th century and made some recordings in the early 20th century when those tools were invented. Gosh, the style of playing was drastically different than what we hear today. And the style from person to person was drastically different. Where has it gone? That makes me sad. Antonio, you said you agree with my vision of classical music. That's good. You see classical music like Shakespeare theater. Yeah. Yes. And Bedlington Grimmer, you said in competitions, couldn't it also be that competitors want to win and they know what the judges would like, so they play that way rather than being different? 100%. In fact, competitors are trained today at least in my personal experience, to put aside their vision of pieces and study what the jury's vision is like and recreate it that way. Which that leads to, well, guess what? Lots of people playing the same way in the competitions. It leads to people that have big voices get voted out. People that have spent time really thinking for themselves about the music and understanding it in a personal way get voted out. Rhodesy, you said you don't think Chopin would win the Chopin competition. I think that's 100% true. Yeah. At least not today, not these days. Maybe earlier, but. Hey, Pianist 2011 will, after the stream, I mean, the chat won't be open, but you can still leave a comment here. You know, I'll try to remember for next time, but you can leave a comment on the video or any of my other videos, of course. And I'll get back to you. Hey, Nathaniel. I'm glad to see you again. Bedlington Grimmer. So you said studying what the judges want happens in all sorts of competitions, be it music or otherwise, and it's so very sad. Yeah. Any other thoughts about this? I wanted to quickly, well, Pianist 2011, if it's after the stream, I probably won't be able to respond. But if you, yeah. And no, I'm not at, no, this is my home studio. So C Drive, gosh, is it Chan Yao Lu? Just signed a recording contract with Decca, 17. Cool. Rhodesy, you say, I don't think Chopin himself performed concerts without the score. Yeah. He only played without score on improv. Yeah. I believe it was Chopin and Liszt that had big disagreements about playing from memory. And Chopin thought playing from memory, which is the standard these days, right, was kind of a slap in the face to the composers, that the composer's notes were not important enough to have out in front of you and not important enough to guide you as you play something. And Liszt, there's some interesting things about Liszt, but he and Paganini, right, were two of the big ones that were proponents of playing from memory, and a great deal of it was just to show off. Let's see. Expian, you say, in youth, you were guilty of wanting to hear music played in one way as you expected it. Yes. In age, you'd rather hear interpretations. Yeah. You know, there are a lot of professors and artists around the world that never leave that. Maybe because of how classical music is usually taught in the famous institutions. It's very rigorous. It's very strict. I don't know if I've shared this on a stream before. At least when I got later into my master's degree program, my teacher was really great about working with me on my interpretations and not imposing his on me. And there aren't that many teachers that do that, that are good doing that. In fact, around the same time in my life, I was at a summer music festival taking a lesson, and I got kicked out of the lesson for having an opinion. And it was an informed opinion. But after studying a work, I had come to a way that I connected with it and that I felt like I could best express the notes that were on the page and best bring them to life. And they were trying to shape it in a very different way And all I did was ask why. And I didn't get an answer. I got kicked out of the lesson because I asked why, and I didn't just blindly agree. So, stories like that, and so a little bit of, other things that I've shared today on this stream, and listening to Pogorelich and talking about competitions, those are all reasons why I left classical music for 10 years. Because it just didn't make sense to me, and I didn't want to be around it. I'm happy to be back. But these days, I'm not afraid of sharing my opinion, and I don't care. I don't care who disagrees, because I've definitely have enough experience playing and having people react to my music and understanding music that I know I'm on the right path. So, oh, yes. Let's see, Rhodesy, you said you loved my recent short on the concept of counter melodies, but there's a limit. You shouldn't change the music, right? There should be wiggle room, though. Yeah. Yeah. But Rhodesy, let's understand, where am I coming from making that video? I'm coming from the place that I'm not talking to someone like Pogorelich. I'm not talking to someone who's, playing concerts. I'm talking to people who are studying music, who don't see the details in the score yet, who don't hear where things change, who don't understand these little Easter eggs that are buried measure after measure after measure in the great works. There are all kinds of little variations, because it's not all that often that you get exactly the same thing by a composer twice. And when you do, we all know, basic rule of pianism, you're not supposed to play it the same way. So even when you get a repeat sign and it's an exact replica, you don't do it the same way. You should be looking for something. And their intent is that you are looking for something. They assume that you are. So don't play it the same way. That's who I'm talking to in a video like that. It's not to say, be willy-nilly and just, you can do anything you want with a piece. But it's saying, there is so much you can do with a piece that a lot of students of music they never dive into, and they never find out, and they never learn. Yeah, pianist. No, I don't have a Mason Hamlin yet. But I'm hoping to very soon. I'm hoping to soon. Yeah. I used to play one all the time. Every day, actually. There was a Model BB that I played all the time. Loved it. Yeah. Hey, pianist, that's great to hear that you're obsessed with Mason Hamlin pianos. They're truly fantastic instruments, and I wish more people knew about them. Yeah. Hey, Rhodes, who said an arm and a leg for a grand piano. Well, all the brands are like that, unfortunately. That's just the world. Hey, Kale, that sounds great. You're going to the Music Teachers Association convention this weekend. Very, very cool. Hey, let's have some questions. We could talk about anything that you want to talk about. This was a great hour listening and reflecting and just hearing that. I would say, to sum up, free yourself from one right way to play great classical music. To play any music. Free yourself. That's partly the reason I chose that word in the title, Pogorelich, genius or heretic, because heretic implies that you're going against something sacred. And I think a lot of people in the classical world treat the score as sacred. And like we talked about earlier today, the score is limited. The score is not the music. The music is what comes off the page. Is the score helpful? Yeah. Are there boundaries? Yes. But the box shouldn't be so small that you can only play it one way. Yeah, hey, Bedlington Groomer. Mention that rabbit hole question again, yes. Because I cannot actually remember enough of the exact words to go into it. Hey, awesome, Rotzi. I'm really glad to hear that you've got a teacher. That's great. Are you working on composition and piano, or just one or the other? And let's see, Zayde, you say thoughts or examples on partial pedaling. So that we just don't use the same piece for our entire day today. Yeah, I'll change it up a little bit. Examples of partial pedaling. So beautiful Debussy piece. I think there are tons and tons of places in Debussy especially, but in other heavily pedaled romantic music where partial pedal is really important. And how the pedal works along with finger pedaling is also really important. So I kind of pair those two things together. Finger pedaling, which is the sustain of fingers across time. Not just legato, but actually sustaining fingers, right? Let's see. I think maybe this view is the best one for you to see. No, maybe overhead's better. Okay, we'll go back. For example, in playing Reverie, very often I will finger pedal all 4 pitches here. Why? Because when the melody comes in, I need to pedal here. And if I let everything go, what happens to that texture? Even though what's printed is only holding down B flat. Listen to that abrupt cutoff of texture. Let me play that again so that listen to the left hand, and when the pedal changes for the sake of the melody clarity, what happens to the texture? It's gone. I don't think that's what Debussy wants. Even though only 1 pitch is written to sustain, I think what he wants is, hey, we have sustained with pedal down from the beginning of the piece. Absolutely, Antonio, my pleasure. We're creating this texture. We don't want that texture to go away, even when the melody comes in. How do we get it to stay there? Finger pedaling everything that the pedal needed to hold. So this isn't partial pedal, but it's related. So I think in a lot of these bars, if you were to hear somebody play, it doesn't sound very dreamlike. It sounds all choppy and broken up, even though that latter version actually follows the score more. So we need to understand what the composer is building, right? When we talk about pedaling and partial pedaling, we need to understand why are things connected in the first place. It's not just about change the pedal when harmony changes, and it's not just about change the pedal when we need to keep the melody clear. It's how does everything work together, perhaps in ways that aren't printed, to make sure that the intention is still given. Yeah. Cynthia, maybe we can actually go to, okay, that's a slightly different question. How to recognize notes and bring them out. Okay, we're going to come back to that. Let's talk about partial pedal in another example in Reverie. I'm looking down at the meno piano. I think some of these bars that have these big arpeggios are potential opportunities to take some partial pedaling. If we don't want the entire thing to just get blurred to oblivion, It can work if you can just put the pedal down and play if the left hand is phrased really, really nicely and kept in the correct dynamic. But we could go back and say, if I did partial pedal that, can I add just a little bit extra clarity to this descent in the melody, but not lose everything in the left hand? That was a partial pedal. It was about a half pedal that I released to and then depressed again. But we retained enough of the bass, but the melody sings a little bit more. So perhaps there are moments that we want to employ something like that rather than just putting the pedal down and going for it. In this particular case, I can't actually sustain. You couldn't sustain the bottom and hold it across a partial pedal or a pedal change, which is why it has to be partial pedal in the first place. We want the pedal to release to help clear a little bit of that, but not completely lose what's happening down here. Yeah. Hey, Zayde, do you have any other questions about partial pedaling? I do a ton of it in my playing. The pedal kind of lives, and I try to teach my students this, that the pedal should kind of live almost right at that point where you start to get like a 3/4 pedal. That it doesn't live all the way at the bottom of the pedal travel. It lives really close. And that way we can shade things with pedal by doing tiny, tiny little foot movements. We can get all kinds of control out of the instrument and out of the tone we're producing and the color by micro movements with the foot. Not really like flutter pedaling, although it's similar, where you're staying right in that place where the dampers contact, but you're not going back and forth really quickly. You're choosing the exact spot that you want just a fraction of dampening. Yeah. Zayde, let me know if you've got further questions about that. Brain Jr., welcome. Hey, you say, they say it's easier to play left-hand mordents with 2-3-1. I would say, well, yeah, you can play left-hand mordents with 2-3-1, like, but you should be able to play them with just about any finger combination. You should be able to get the same tone out of 1-2-1, 2-3-2, and 2-3-1. Understand why is 2-3-1 supposedly easier? Because of that finger exchange. Because that the in this case the upper note has to be repeated so quickly that it's easier to get another finger on it. If it's possible to use that kind of fingering, great. But guess what? In a lot of Baroque music, you're going to come across bars where you're going to have to play a mordent or a turn of some kind or a trill, and you're not going to be able to do a finger exchange like that. You're going to have to be able to play it with more awkward fingers. So when you're just working on a 3-note lower mordent in this case, work on playing them with a bunch of finger combinations in the piece, if that's a possibility. Hey, Ravi. Ravi, that's a great question. You say, people talk about color, tone, dynamics, texture, composer's intention in piano playing. How do you learn and try to differentiate, and I'll add the word, kind of absorb all of that information at no cost or at low cost? Well, Ravi, I have 2 suggestions for you. At no cost, I've talked about this on other streams, but at no cost, you can find great information on YouTube. The trouble is it's really hard to understand how you exactly need to apply it. So you can get tons of information. But the trouble is without someone to talk to about it, someone who's been there and experienced things, you're kind of still walking in the dark. It's like you've been given a flashlight and that, hey, there's a tool, and I have it now. But then you're confronted with a multitude of paths to walk down. And without someone to help exactly where you are today, it's really difficult to understand, well, what path do I really walk with this new tool that I have? How do I put it into practice? And so one great thing is these streams, Ravi. You can always send music in. You can ask questions about the pieces you're playing. You can send videos in of you playing, and we'll talk about them. We haven't had one of those in some time, but there are lots of streams where we have 2 or 3 video submissions, and we listen to what people are doing, and we talk about it. And that's great because I, as the teacher, get to meet you exactly where you are today with the exact piece, exactly in the stage of learning that you're in. All of that affects the path we walk. So I'd encourage you to get plugged into, like, what I do here on the channel is completely free. And there are a couple other groups that I can tell you about being involved in. My friend Aaron Pettit has a free community on School. He's not super active in responding to things. I mean, he's busy. But there would be a lot of information on there. I have a group that I run. It's not free, but it is only $47 a month, which is about 25% of what it costs to take a single private lesson with me. And we have like 10 hours of meetings a month together. So I'd encourage you to check that out. There's information about that in the description below. It's called Next Level Pianist Academy. And there are a number of people here who are part of the group. Ravi, I think my answer to you is really coming down to how do we balance having some time with an expert. And you can do a great job. You can research things on your own, but then you still have to say, hey, I found this technique, or I found this exercise, or I found this way of approaching a piece. And if we can't, it's very difficult, almost impossible, to walk that journey on your own and come to the most true understanding. So any way that you can find to get plugged in with a mentor, if you don't have a budget for it, find those ways. So the video submission here is completely free. Aaron's group is completely free when you just join, or very limited expense, like my private group that we meet. We meet twice a week, every week, and we talk about a ton of things. Okay. Hey, Zayday, you say, in playing Bach, no ornaments a valid practice method? Yes. In fact, if you need to be able to understand the music the first time around, yeah, learn things with no ornaments, period. Add ornaments in later as your understanding of all the voices and the layers and everything as that has become more cohesive. I wanted to go back. A Bedlington Groomer reposted their question from like 30 minutes ago. Okay. Yes, Ravi, my pleasure. Bedlington Groomer, you said, wouldn't a great pianist always play a piece the way they want to hear it? And then you draw a differentiation. I mean, very different from a student who's being taught how to play the way the composer would want it. So a great musician, and part of what I think all lessons should be teaching musicians, students of all levels, is how to better hear music for yourself. And how to come to an understanding of what you hear when others play. Secondly, come to an understanding of what you hear when you hear yourself back on a recording and you hear yourself play. And thirdly, most deeply, how to come to an understanding where your ears and your body are kind of separate as you play, where your body performs certain actions and certain gestures, and your ears are responding only to what they hear, not to the rest of the input the brain gets about, well, I followed this gesture and I played this note and I'm doing this. That they're detached. They're like two separate beings. So that you have part of you that is purely listening and the other part is executing. And the part of you that's purely listening can tell the part that's playing how to play. That's the deepest level. It takes time to get there. So, is a great artist, a great musician, any instrument, are they going to play a piece the way they want to hear it? Yes. And they will have an extraordinarily deep understanding of every nuance that they want the piano to make as they play. And then they will actively react to it in performance. It's not that something is practiced so well that every time it gets recreated the same way. But it's that there isn't very much variation, but that there's enough understanding. There's enough understanding of technique. There's enough understanding of what constitutes good phrase. There's enough understanding of how music works emotionally and how it tells stories, that every note is a part of a new story we're telling today, and how we connect it to the next note is always an active process. It's never a recreation of how we practiced it. It's always a creation of how we're hearing it right now. That's the goal. So great artists are going to do that. Now, the second part of your question, though, as opposed to a student being taught to play the way the composer would want it, a great artist is going to reconcile both how they want to hear a piece and how the composer wants the piece to be heard. So a great artist isn't going to go so far as to tear the boundaries down and break the box down that the composition lives in. They're going to respect that. Part of what we were talking about earlier was that the box is so small that there's just not a lot of variation. But I think the box can be much larger without going outside of it, without coloring outside the lines, without breaking rules. So a great artist's interpretation is still going to be informed by what the composer wants. Why do students get taught, when we work on interpretation, they get taught, what does the composer want? And they get taught a smaller box. Because we have to start somewhere. And if a student's given free rein to play anything and do anything with the notes, very often what happens is that the composer's intentions are not obeyed, and the piece becomes something that wasn't actually written down. It becomes maybe overly personal. It becomes distorted. And the work changes. At its core, the work is the musical piece, the work is changed. Learning the boundary and learning how we can push on it and rebound and come back, that's a fine art. So when we start talking about interpretation and we start talking about rubato, it comes from a place where very little goes a really long way. And we want to learn how to hear very little, because we have to learn how to hear the nuance of that before we're going to understand. I've had a couple students, it sounds like a brag, it's not, but they have heard some things I've played and they really like them, and my recordings of pieces end up being their primary reference. I really appreciate that. And it's actually great, because when we come to a lesson to work on it and we're talking about, how I played it and performed it versus what they're working on, they'll point to me and say, well, you played it this way and you took time here and you took this liberty and you changed this dynamic. And I say, great listening. That's awesome. What's the problem if... And you could even try this. Everybody here could try this. If you have a great recording that you listen to of a work that you're studying, and you have yours, try to mimic what happens on that recording. Can you mimic the rubato? Can you mimic the dynamic? Can you mimic the connection of the phrase? If you get all those right, you probably don't need to be studying anymore. Often what happens is in the process of mimicking someone else's playing, the thread that's holding it all together for that performer never existed for the person who's mimicking it. And so they hear dynamic change and they hear shape and they hear rubato. But when they try to do it, it's almost like an invisible thread. And when that thread's gone, what comes out is not the same thing. In fact, the student's performance, although maybe across time and in dynamic, if you were to plot it on a graph, it might be extraordinarily close to the professional recording that they're mimicking. The emotion is broken. So, in order to not break the emotion, we start with what were the composer's intentions, and we start with, if you are given no liberty in pulse, how can you show that? How can you show, and it's even a great thing if you're more experienced, go back, especially if you over interpret, let's say, go back and play the music you're working on without that expansive interpretation. Limit yourself. I find it's really helpful. My teacher used to call it spring cleaning, especially after living and performing a work many, many times. Go back and what happens is over time, especially in performances, how you feel the work changes. And it could be good, it can be freeing, but we are so close to the notes and the rhythms and the piece that we don't realize how we've gone from A to B to C to D. And then we're playing something today and we don't realize, oh, I am really overdoing some things that I didn't do at all at the beginning. And those things need to get pulled back in, even as a professional. So it's really important to limit yourself and go back to just playing in tempo. And that's why also with students, we start with just in tempo, and rubato is the slightest amount of time. Can we feel that? Can we react to it? How does it make us feel? How does it change the phrase? How does it change how we have to begin the next phrase? There are all kinds of questions to ask just about one little moment. And then when we get to the point where we can string those together, then when we start to be able to say, well, let's forget about pulse. Because pulse at that point is so baked in, you don't have to think about it anymore. And the sense of pulse is really one of the parts of that invisible thread. And even if the pulse is changing over time, it's our sense of it that holds together across sometimes really great rubato. And I don't mean great as in good, I mean a large amount. So Bedlington Grammaricy, you followed up. So you say that's a student getting complete free rein would be too much. That you understand. Mimicking as a student makes sense. I think I've said this before. One of my teachers forbade me from listening to Horowitz because I would come into, I loved Horowitz's playing. I still do. And I like listening to it. But sometimes the works I was practicing, I would come into a lesson having immersed myself in Horowitz's playing of it, and I would be doing things that weren't on the score, except I was missing the thread. And so my performance was broken. How did I need to get out of that? I had to stop mimicking Horowitz, and I had to learn for myself what phrase is. So listening to music is really important because we can learn a lot from listening to great artists. But that also needs to be balanced with hearing for ourselves. Bedlington Groomer, you also said, what you were thinking is that a truly great pianist with decades of musical understanding can go much further because they do understand the what and the whys. Yeah. Yep. I don't have anything to add to that. Zayda, you say there must come a time when the student learns to fly alone, or do we need a mentor forever? I think, as a teacher, the best moments are when students learn so much and show so much that they can go out and interpret things on their own. That's always the best. When the student has learned the tools and learned the paths to walk, that they can really make music on their own and they don't need help doing it anymore. So I think, no, the goal, I think, for every teacher is that eventually students don't need them anymore and they don't need any teacher anymore. That takes a long time and a lot of study, but that is our goal for everyone that we work with, that our job is not to teach you to get louder here and softer here, is to teach you, why are we getting louder here and softer here? Because when you know the why, you can apply it outside just that single phrase. Restless guitar, drop your question on balance, if you could again. I'd appreciate that. Zayde, one more thing though. Even as professionals, it can be really nice to have a colleague or a friend that you can still play for and get feedback from. Because it can just be really nice when, if you have been so immersed in things on your own, to get that outside opinion. And it's not going to be like, there isn't going to be any, you did this wrong or you did this poorly or you need to practice that, like you probably would hear in a lesson because we're past that point. But it might be things like, there's this phrase that relates to this other phrase and I didn't understand that you were relating the two. It didn't come across in your performance and there's an opportunity that you missed. And so maybe you didn't see it in the score, or maybe you were just distracted by thinking about phrasing something else. But it would be really nice if we could hear this other thing. It would be really nice if you were able to pay attention to that so we could hear the relationship that the composer gave us. They put those notes there on purpose. That would be the kind of reaction I'd be looking for from a colleague. Hey, wow, that was a really great tempo. Do you think you could get the same thing across emotionally if you just took 3 beats per minute off the tempo? And it was just a little more clear what you were trying to say, but a hair slower, almost imperceptible to an audience, but very perceptible to the performer. Something like that, where maybe I have become so immersed in playing something that, especially if I haven't recorded myself, things are running away a little bit maybe in a piece that's aggressive or big or fast or driving. And having someone to react to that I really trust and tell me, it was like teetering on the edge there. You don't want it teetering. You don't want the audience to feel teetering. You want them to feel like we're looking over the cliff, but we're not going to fall off. We are safe. It's just this beautiful, gorgeous scene. But we're not getting anxiety listening that, oh my God, this is going to be a disaster, like any second. And there's a fine line. How close can we get to the edge of the cliff before that happens? A great pianist, we're going to be able to take more and more steps there and still feel safe. But we don't want to ever not feel safe. Yeah. Yep. C drive, you said the top tennis players all have a coach. Yeah. Because it's that experience from outside of us that's still really important. So sometimes I'll send friends recordings of stuff, even if I can't play live for them, I'll send them a recording and say, or even sometimes pieces I'm working on composing, I'll send them a few snippets and say, what do you think? Just to get some feedback. Okay. Pianist 2011, I have a quick answer to your thing, and I do want to get to Restless Guitar's question. I'm sure your first question, I should say. How did I become so good at musicality? I would give a lot of credit to learning to write and express my own music, and learning how to create music from nothing, not just recreate what someone else wrote, but to create music from nothing, and what goes into that. And then when I approach music that someone else wrote, I think so differently about it than I used to. But used to is, I've been writing music for a really long time. I started when I was an early teenager, and it wasn't formal or anything like that, but it's been a part of my musical life for a really long time. But I think it's that creative experience. A lot of people that practice just sit and practice, and you practice your exercises, and you practice your scales, and you practice your repertoire, and you practice sight reading. Well, when do you practice creating music? So I think having some time to really devote to that, it's really hard to practice creating music in interpretation. You can do it, and that's how a lot of great artists will practice if they're not composers themselves. But, they've mastered everything else completely. So if you're not at that point where you've got perfect technique and all kinds of things, I think one of the best ways to learn how to be musical is to write your own music and know what you want to express, and then play it in a way that expresses that. And there's no teacher, we can talk about composition and there are tools, of course, but no teacher is going to be able to teach you things that you feel and that have to come from within. A teacher can maybe help you find them occasionally, but they still come from within. So that personal experience, I think, is really important. Oh, gosh. So, Restless Guitar, I want to answer your question. You asked, what's the best exercise to learn different dynamic between hands, parts of the hand, like balance and voicing? I've got a few things to maybe share with you. It's going to sound elementary, maybe, but go back to your scales, Restless Guitar, and can you play scales where one hand does something very different from the other? It could even be something else. It could be an exercise. It could be Hannon. It should be a group of notes that you don't have to think about how to execute them. Scales are hopefully that, at least in some part for us, that we don't have to think about. We've gotten to the point where we don't have to think about how the thumb tucks or how the fingers cross or what fingers to use on what notes or what notes are in the scale to begin with. We want to learn that as fast as we can so that we can then use a scale to work on playing forte with the right, piano with the left, or vice versa. And take a tempo that is slow enough that you can start to be able to articulate that. If you have trouble being able to articulate a difference at the same time with hands together, separate them out slightly. Play the forte first. And play the piano second. Still scale, right? Left hand. That's just those two dynamics, and you could go very deep with how you ask your two hands to do independent things, from creating crescendos and decrescendos at different times with different hands, crescendoing part of a scale, decrescendoing another part of a scale. Doing it simultaneously, can both hands do it together in the same way? Can they do opposite things? Do we have control over... let's say if you're practicing in rhythms. With one hand, can you accent the long? Can you accent the short? and not accent the other pitch. So this is all working on control. And then you asked about balance and voicing inside the hand. There's a great exercise by Dochnany. That's Dohnanyi, I think. Let me see if I can, I'll be able to, I think I'll get it right. I'm going to type it in the chat. When my keyboard reconnects. This might be the correct spelling. It's going to be close. If you put that in Google, you should get the right thing. I don't know why that just... okay. Can everybody see the name I just put in the chat? Or does it say something else for you? While you're answering, you can see the name. Great. I don't have a digital copy of this on my score, so I'm going to grab my, on my iPad, so I'm going to grab my score off the bookshelf, and I'll confirm that that's the spelling, and then I'll show the exercise as best as I can. Oh, I was close. Let me put the correct spelling in. Yeah, thanks, Sade. Okay. Here's one copy of the Dochnany exercises. This is the Budapest edition. Maybe this is a little more clear. And we're going to look at exercise 16 and 16A, which might be too small for you to see. Whoop, let's see. Maybe if I get closer, it's going to go out of focus. But let me try. So these two exercises, and I'm going to go through a little demonstration of them. 16 and 16A. What's given in the score is actually very, very difficult, but you can take the principle and apply it to simple chords. So what's given in the score is always a grace note that is forte, followed by the rest of a chord that is piano. This is going to help us learn how to voice up all the different notes of a chord. So the example gives a fully diminished 7 chord, which is quite a big stretch. I'm going to play through them the way it's printed, and then I'll show you how it translates into a typical triad, for example. Here's the next note of the chord. Next note. So it's always one note of the chord stepping up, and then you could go back down. Now with practice, what we want to be able to do is articulate each of those up and down. So you could hear there was an arpeggio inside that, but all 5 notes of the chord were always played. That's when you kind of mastered voicing, you should be able to do that. Maybe with a little practice, but you should be able to do that without too much work. Let's apply it to just a triad. Let's say we just have a D major triad, and we want to work on voicing the top note, which is most often the one that needs to be brought out. Play it first, like a grace note, followed by the rest of the chord piano. Very soft, as soft as you can, maybe. Exaggerate that difference. Don't work on phrase. Exaggerate the difference. And give yourself enough time between the forte pitch, the one that's being voiced up, and the rest of the chord, that you can really understand how the hand is working differently. You begin to understand how the hand is working differently to play those. Yeah, no. As you get better at this, or as you go through practice over on a day, decrease that amount of time. Until the chord comes together, yet you're still voicing up the pitch you want. How about the middle pitch? And the bottom pitch. Can we go through all three without the separation? I lost the F sharp there. Okay. As you go through those kinds of things, you'll start to understand more about the position the hand is in to help create that voicing, because you're experiencing how to accent it and bring it out in the first place. If you do get the score, basically all of that is in here with one key, one example, using very big chords. That's how I learned this, was in this book, going through these examples. Like other exercise books, you're supposed to take this and apply the pitches given to a variety of keys. So everything built here is, for example, C, fully diminished 7. Let's see, the 7th gets flatted then. Yeah. And then we go back. Changes to dominant. Yeah, that. So we work on those 3 hand shapes, but that's very spread. The bigger the chord is, the more fingers we're using. I think I said everything. The bigger the chord, more of the 5 fingers we're using, the further they're spread across the keyboard, the harder that exercise becomes. Hey, Backwards Fellow, thanks for that. The Dakiani is available on IMSLP. They're not the most intriguing exercises to play, so you can use it as a resource to get you started, and then you can use things in your repertoire to practice using the same concept. You're working on a Bach Busoni, Sede. Very nice. Great. Restless guitar, that was your question. Yeah. Restless guitar, I would start first by working on, in the sense that you're working on movement, work on the movement in that you accent one note and don't when they're broken apart. And then your ear is confirming that. And we don't try to follow the arpeggiation up and down, back and forth, until we've got more experience doing it. But it really, in time, you're going to have to think about which note you want to bring out. And as you learn how to accent it, you're going to learn maybe, let's say if we want to bring out 5th finger, the hand is going to maybe get slightly rotated toward 5. But what I found in teaching this is that everybody does it just a little bit differently. Some people might use a little bit more finger articulation and less rotation. So I don't want to kind of say, well, look for this type of feeling. I'd rather say start with an accent and see what it feels like to you, and then let that guide you. But eventually, our ear says, bring out the top. And our body just goes, okay, I will, because we practiced it enough. Yeah. Some good questions here. Pianist 2011, I have a Kawai RX5 that's modded out. You have, gosh, lots of questions, Pianist 2011. Let's see. Cynthia, I want to go back. Cynthia, you asked this question a while ago. Thanks for reposting. You had a question. What are some tips to recognize notes that you need to bring out? And you're working on Debussy's Arabesque. So let's talk about that. And then I can maybe answer a couple quick questions before we finish up today. And Pianist 2011, I can answer that question, your last one. Do I have any videos on piano posture? Yes, I've got 5. They live in a playlist here on the channel. They go through every detail from bench distance, bench height, where we sit on the bench, how we use the body in playing. Yeah, look for those. They are in depth. Zayde, your question's related to the last one. Bringing out the middle note of the chord. Well, I didn't give Restless Guitar any tips like this, but can you feel an extra firm bridge over the finger that is used to articulate the middle of the chord? So when I want to bring out, for example, this is the D major chord. If I want to bring out F sharp, I am providing additional structure to the bridge over the 3rd finger. That's my preferred way of doing it, not to use finger articulation, but to provide more rigidity, not tension, rigidity to the structure, so that when I play, I know I can channel most of that energy through one of the fingers. And I'm choosing, depending on how I build that rigidity in the hand, I can choose where that energy flows. Sounded really complicated when I just said that. But that's my biggest tip for you about bringing out that finger. Can you change how rigid the bridge is? Can you experience that? And then can you move that center point, or almost like the fulcrum that the bridge is built around? Can you move it from finger to finger? Okay, I want to go back to Cynthia's question, and then I'll get to whatever we can in our remaining time. Cynthia, you brought up a bar number. You said measure 40. So, okay. Here we are. And this is in the tempo rubato. Oh, sorry. So measure 40, I'm assuming the F sharp, Cynthia, in measure 40 that you're talking about is the half note, stem up. So let's see, bring out the F sharp. Yep. This is a pretty simple one because it comes from just recognizing where does the melody live. Cynthia, have you played the melody on its own? That's on the next line, yeah? So have you worked on that? Have you listened to how the melody is shaped there? I would even go so far as to say, even while you're working on the melody only without the rest of the voices, play it with the pedal that you would use as if you were playing all of the voices. If I were to write that pedaling in, right, it'll be pedal, 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 pedal. Do I pedal there? No, one pedal, pedal, pedal. Okay, so those are all the pedals that I would take if I was playing everything together. Now I'm just going to play the melody line, but pedal it the same way. So I'm still working on the foot coordination that I need as if I was playing all of the voices. And I'm not just playing going. Why is that important? Having the pedal down changes the dimension of the melody line. And it should change our perception of it, which means then it also changes how we feel about phrasing it. If we only play without the pedal, it's so flat, it almost encourages you to create a flat shape. But the pedal has more dimensions. Can we enhance that? So that's one of my reasons to work on phrasing. A lot of teachers suggest doing this without pedal. I say, if you can, play the pedal that you're going to use in the performance. Okay, secondly, your real question was, how do you know to bring out the F sharp? We started talking about melody because the F sharp is part of the melodic phrase. Okay, there's a secondary component here. It is toward the end of the phrase, so we should be getting softer. How much do we bring out the F sharp? Let me play it without bringing it up. It's still on top of the texture, but it was soft. We have had in measure 39, the first bar of the tempo rubato, we have a lot of quicker rhythms. And that melodic line is always moving. It's kind of tumbling after it's been at rest, coming out of the previous section. And then it stops tumbling. Because of the lack of movement, rhythmic movement, sometimes we need to give just a little more dynamic to make sure that that melodic note carries to the next one. You know, legato is, it's an auditory sensation, right? Legato means connect. We can absolutely practice this with finger legato, except where we have that repeated note. But legato also means, picking up where the previous note left off. And if we truly do that at the piano, all we end up doing is getting softer and softer and softer and softer from our first note, because the piano by nature is a decaying instrument. The sound continues to go away. So whenever we're truly connecting, we have to fake some things. We have to fake that connection in a way it kind of breaks the rule of legato, if the technical rule. So in order for that F sharp to last 2 beats and to feel like it's going to connect to the G sharp at the end of the bar, yeah, we need to play it out a little more because it has to carry 2 beats. The previous bar, they were fractions of a beat. That's another thing to look for. How is the rhythm and the melody being used, or in a counter melody? And how is that affecting the note that how much we need to bring something out? Where there's a lot of movement, you need to do less work. Where there's not a lot of movement, we have to be really, I'll say careful, but not hesitant, but we have to listen closely. Because if we just play the chord and shape it down, we lose the melody because of the compositional hesitation that's built in there. I hope that's all making sense, Cynthia. So look for, where's the melody? Have I played the melody? Do I understand where it's going? And, okay, deeper than that, what is the rhythm that's happening? How long do these pitches need to sing and need to last? Sometimes the longer they need to sing, we have to give slightly more. And I'm talking about shades. I'm not leaving the piano dynamic that's marked here on the page. I'm not saying play the F sharp forte. It's still within, we're creating a feeling of piano. But it needs to be bigger to last so that we still have a feeling of piano when we connect to the next one. Thirdly, what's happening harmonically? Okay, so we have B minor 7, add 9. And then, let's see, we're supposed to be in the key of A, so that'd be 2 to the 5 chord, to minor 6, to, this has got to be a, secondary dominant of 5. Okay, that was a quick analysis, but let's sum that up with one important thing that happens on that beat. There's an accidental there. Accidentals often mean something is out of the key, something is not diatonic. If something's not diatonic, it's probably, there's a lot of color in that chord. There's a lot of character in that chord in the phrase. Everything else might be beautiful, but when we get to the note, the chord with that accidental, that's unexpected. Because earlier in the bar, we played B minor. So we'd expect B minor. Not B major, not B dominant 7. That change in the accidental is your hint. Also means, oh, that melodic tone is sitting on top of a harmony that's extra special. And so I can enhance that melodic tone even more. Yep. Okay. Cynthia, I hope that answers some of your questions. 0. Oh gosh. Okay. You've been asking this question from a lot of the stream. How to learn a new piece fast. And Bachward's fellow, I don't know if I'm going to I'll see if I can have time to go through your crab scale. Let's see. Cynthia, where did you post that? Well, we'll see. And let's see. 0, you said, where's your comment? How do you learn a new piece quickly? This is related to Liszt's saying, make haste slowly. I don't just mean take a slow tempo, but 1, have patience. You're going to learn deeply and more efficiently if you have patience with the process. And part of patience is not biting off more than we can chew. I think it's counterintuitive because if we want to learn something as quickly as possible, we might think, I need to dive into all of the notes. Like day 1, I need to play all the notes, or as many as I can possibly get in and play. I need to read the whole piece or something like that. And I would say, no, maybe listen to it and understand where things are going. But what's most important is taking things in bite-sized pieces and then slowly building little bits of mastery of those little bite-sized pieces over time. So that when you come and you sit down on day 1 and you play through something, you say, okay, I'm going to work on 4 bars. Just 4 bars. And what all needs to be done about those 4 bars? Okay. Yeah. So 0, so you need to work on 2 different skills because you say you can't read it or it's hard to read. Well, we want to get your sight reading better so that it's not such a task to read the notes off the page. But that's separate from learning the piece. Okay. So 0 in a piece like that, 1 bar, maybe 2. And I know that's not very much. But take 1 and work on it deeply. So take that one bar and say, how can I perfect the gesture of the right hand playing through these? How can I exaggerate, or can I better hear the crescendo that single note makes at the top? Then you might even connect it so that we hear the connection. Thanks, Restless Guitar. Yeah, bite size. That's a great video. Okay, so just one bar. Now it's just one hand of one bar. If you want to get both hands engaged, just play the bass. Okay, what if it's too hard to play that tempo? But we can work on a variety of technical approaches to make sure that our articulation of our fingers through that quasi-arpeggio, that they're all working for us. Yeah? You could, we're not going to go down that path. There's tons and tons and tons of ways you could technically practice just one hand of the bar. Then do the same thing for the other hand. Try working at different tempi. So, can you exaggerate the motion? This is supposed to be these big motions of the arm and the wrist. Connect across the bar. That's it. Just work on that much. And don't get bored with it. If you start to feel like, it's just the same thing over and over again, what is the next thing that you can work on about it to make it better? It's not, I know who I'm talking to, so it's not getting faster. Faster isn't the goal. Zero, you say you're trying to connect all the parts together. Okay. So work on, if you know 2 bars, for example, work on connecting bars 1 and 2. If you know the first 4 bars, don't just play from the beginning through 4, play bar 2 through 3. Or play beat 4 to beat 1. To beat 1. Can you do that again? 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Start in different places. Not just not just at the beginnings of bars. Start in different beats of bars. And can you pick up exactly where you are in the phrase at that point, into the next point? So we started simply, and we've gone much, much more deeply. Zero, you shouldn't have to read to do that. Here's the thing. If you have the muscle memory built, our goal is that you can start any beat, and it only takes you 1 note, 2 notes to cue the muscle memory. And then you're still playing muscle memory. You're just inviting it to start in a different place. If you can play from bar 1 into bar 2, you should be able to play from beat 4 into beat 1. And if you can't, okay, so 0, you can't, you have to start back from the beginning of the piece. All you need to do is practice starting in different bars. You don't have to read every note. You just need to recognize musically, where are you in the piece, and can you recreate that? It's not, because we don't want to sit and go, that's not going to trigger muscle memory. You could say, well, when I start from the beginning, that's the shape. When I look at beat 4, it's the same shape. Let me just play the same shape. Well, that's beat 4. There's beat 4 to 1. I'm not reading all the notes on the page. There's a lot of notes. I am saying, hey, beat 4 is the same A flat major chord it's in the rest of the bar, and that we're going to come back to in the next bar. It's the same one. I've played it 1,000,000 times because of how the piece is structured. Can you just play that one in isolation? Then if you can do that, you can start anywhere. You could start beat 4 of measure 1. You could start beat 3 of measure 2. Because it's the same. It's just the same pattern. Yes. 0, you can see those. You can see those. You need to take a step back and look at the bigger picture and not just look at every individual note. I can see them. Yeah, I can see them instantly. Sure. If you can't do that, that's fine right now. But you can see the patterns. You know the patterns. If you can play them, you know them. So the challenge is, let's say, from memory, can you play some of the patterns of the piece? Can you play A flat? Can you play it's kind of F minor 7. Can you play E flat dominant? How about, what is this one? It's super similar to the other patterns. 0, you don't, that, if we were working together, 0, I'd say you don't have to know the notes. That I'm getting the sense that you are building your own barrier to being able to play it more fluently, because your mindset is on, I have to read it in order to be able to play it. And I would say, try to change that to, let me try to experiment with how to play it. Can I experiment with finding the notes? Can I experiment away from the score with finding the notes? And it's okay if they're not right away. You don't have to get it right the first time. But can we find them? And the more you're able to allow yourself that freedom, the more you're going to find, oh, they're in there. Right? So 0, I say things like A flat dominant because it's a quick, if you know music theory, it tells you exactly what to play. It tells you the combination of notes. And if you were looking at the score, I could tell you, oh, it's this chord, and I wouldn't have to give you a beat number and a bar number. You would be able to find it. But you don't have to know that. Just like you don't have to know the note names to play the piece. I'm not reading the note name. When I read this, I haven't practiced this. I'm sight reading it. When I'm reading it, I'm not reading the note names. I'm just reading a shape. And I recognize it because I've played lots of A flat major in lots of variations, but it's just a shape. And a great way to get into that is to not look at the page, just watch your hands play it. Where is the shape? Restless guitar, that's absolutely true. Blocking as chords is a great practice tool. However, you can't do it in this piece. So I think for most students, by the time you play something like this, you should already know how to do this kind of, how to see these patterns, because this is an exceptionally advanced. I mean, no, it's not the hardest etude, but all Chopin etudes are exceptionally advanced. So 0, you have to start. You say a lot of things that you're typing in, I see excuses. Instead of saying, okay, I don't get it right now, but I can work at it, right? How do I go about seeing the harmony? Can I spend 10 minutes on a bar and just look at how the notes are put together? Yeah, that's really important. The only way you're going to start to be able to see those patterns is if it's not going to happen by osmosis. And it's not going to happen by going through the piece. It's just like, You know, the way most students, for example, practice scales is just to go through the motions. That's not what scales are for. Scales are there to help us in lots and lots and lots of different ways. They're not just to play and not just to warm up. They're really deep. And at their core, scales teach us about tonal centers. They teach us even about harmony. Hey, Bjorn, no problem. So, Zero, it's really about being okay with exploring music and not just playing the notes on the page. And being okay with taking the time to do that. I didn't learn to see patterns by... This is a personal story. There are lots of ways to get there. I didn't learn to see patterns by playing scales or by practicing cadence patterns or by doing harmonic analysis. I learned to see patterns by improvising on popular music. And when I started doing that, how I saw classical music totally changed. And it was easier to do it in popular music because the chords were so much simpler. I could actually grasp 3 notes at a time and not have to worry about so much happening. So I started saying, can I play this bar in a different way? It was just whatever, bar of a Beatles tune. Can I play it in a different way? Can I make it sound richer? Can I make it sound thinner? And how do I go about doing that? And it was just fun, experimenting, not having to practice a certain series of notes. It was about exploring a piece of music. And so it wasn't even a part of my practice. It was just fun. And doing that unlocked seeing patterns everywhere. Because then when I started seeing it in pop music, then I could start seeing it in classical music, and then I could start seeing it in sight reading when I was just working on something for the very first time. But you have to start somewhere. And you have to start by giving yourself the time to get into it and to just experience it. So, yeah, Zayday said, you will. You absolutely will. You just need to carve out 5 minutes or 10 minutes and say, I'm going to work on a certain beat. I'm going to work on understanding a certain beat of this piece. Great. And what is it? Zero. I did a great video on this. I can't remember the name of it. I can't remember the name of it, but it's on... I'm going to find it just so I can tell you the right thing, because it's this concept used in a much simpler piece. Okay. And then C Drive. Isn't there an app for that? I don't know, C Drive. Oh dear. I should be getting close. Yeah, the video is called The Hidden Practice Method Inside Every Piece You Play. Check out that video, Zero. The hidden practice method inside every piece you play. Because it's about how we use harmonic understanding to explore around the keyboard, and how that exploration ties into a great deal more fluency for us. That doesn't come just from playing a lot of music. I've got real life examples of that, like working with doctoral students and asking them to, like, can you work a simple hymn at church? Can you just add a couple of notes to fill it out? I'd ask them. They've been playing the piano for 30 years. We'll call it playing the piano by number, like coloring by number. Like they've been in the box. All they've done is look at notes. And I asked them, just fill out that texture a little bit. And it's a simple 4-chord thing. And they're playing Chopin ballades and etudes and the Rachmaninoff Second Concerto, among other things. And they look at me, and it's like a simple Bach chorale, and they say, I can't do that. Point is, it doesn't happen with just a lot of time spent practicing playing notes that are on a page. It does happen when you spend time saying, okay, there's all these notes. Let me figure out how this is put together. And it can be fun. It really can be. Ravi, and hey, let's see, Restless Guitar, you kind of answered. Ravi, you asked, how do you increase finger strength? You don't. Well, I know what you mean, Ravi. Finger strength is a myth. Fingers don't become stronger. They become more independent. We gain greater control over them. But whatever you do, Ravi, do not do a lifting finger thing to try to strengthen fingers. If you're going to work on playing an arpeggio, don't do that. That's actually worse for you. There are a lot of people there are even a couple channels I found on YouTube recently that are promoting that, and it doesn't, if it works for them, they are not common, and they just haven't gotten injured yet. Finger strength, finger independence comes from just playing, just using the body more, just like everything else that we do. If you want to become a faster runner, you run more. If you want to become better at golf, you practice more and you work on certain technical drills for that game and how you use the body in that way. And you know what? If we just practice our scales and we practice some exercises or etudes and we work on our repertoire, a lot of that is happening. There is a little bit of help you can give yourself if you understand how, especially usually people ask that question, how do we strengthen fingers? Because you're asking especially about 4 and 5. And 4 and 5 are called the weak fingers. It's not because they need more strength. It's because they need more support from the rest of the playing mechanism in order to play strongly, in order to give a strong tone. Support for the 4th finger and the 5th finger comes in great deal from wrist position. Up there. If you want to have a strong 4 and 5, you don't play with a low wrist. Right? That won't happen. You won't be able to bring them out, not very easily. But if the wrist and the bridge are structured, now, that's really easy. It takes almost no effort, especially compared to being down here. Right? And try to use a little bit more rotation and a little bit more height. But look at the height of my wrist. It's not that. It's just not down here. We call this neutral. It's not neutral. It's just slightly elevated to give more control and more drive through 4 and 5. Yeah. So that's part of it. And then you can also rotate. If you rotate toward 5 and toward 4, wow, there's no strength involved. It's just utilizing the body in the best way possible to provide energy through that finger. So, by the way, if you see people playing Hanon with that big lifting of the fingers, what that's actually doing is the finger that's being held down is pulling the tendons and even the muscles in the palm of the hand in one direction, and the fingers that you're trying to raise are trying to pull it in the opposite direction, and you're telling the body to fight itself. it's never a good thing. And it actually doesn't work. Okay. Pianist 2011. Is it, you say, hard to hold that without tension? Are you talking about a higher bridge? Yeah. What you want to do is just go from your typical hand position and just raise it a little bit. There's a big difference between tension and structure. Structure in the hand is good. Tension in the hand prohibits the fingers from moving. Structure in the hand means you could come here and you could push on this and it doesn't break. It's very firm, but my fingers are still completely under control. It's different than saying, I'm going to lock my hand in this position. And now, yeah, sure, you could push on it, but I also can't wiggle my fingers at all. That's different. Yeah. Okay. I have to run. This has been a great stream, but I'm way over. Okay. 0, would pressing a key the right way, is it a matter of slow practice? No. It's not. It's a matter of correct practice. Slow practice only reinforces what you're already doing. If you're doing it correctly, slow practice is great. If you're not, slow practice is just as bad as fast practice because we're reinforcing the wrong thing. So, yeah. Hey, yes, cheers, Zayde. Cheers, everybody. Thanks so much for being here. And I don't know when our next stream is going to be. Let me tell you real quick. No, it'll be July 8th. We're at the end of June. July 8th, our next stream. 2 weeks. Hope to see many of you then. Yeah, hit that thumbs up button if you haven't already. And yeah, continue to revisit the channel. There was a short that came out just yesterday on some counter melodies. Check it out. And I will see you next time, okay? All right, everybody. Thanks for all the great questions. I appreciate it. And thanks. Antonio had to go, but thanks to Antonio for spurring, I think, a really cool conversation that we started with about Pogorelich. So thanks, everybody, for sticking around the whole time. I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.